All right, so I appreciate that. My name is Rich Wilson. I'm the Vice President of Customer Experience for Brightwave. And yeah, we're a man down right now, but you know what? It's cool. We can like lounge on the couch, hang out, get comfortable. Yeah. It's all good. We're running over anyway, so this is a good thing. I run the technology, creative, and strategy groups at Brightwave, which means I get a pretty unique insight into a lot of different brands' data setup and their logistics and how they're using data. And you know, I'll tell you, there's a world that I get glimpses of now and then that I'd like to share with you. It's not really real. It's this magical place that I'd like us all to go to, and I think we're all going to be there eventually. And I'd like to call this place Data Unicorn Land. Data Unicorn Land, taken straight from a 1987 Trapper Keeper. In Data Unicorn Land, everything you need to be relevant is at your fingertips. All your customer data, all your sales data, everything you possibly need is in one single normalized, unified place. All of your executives agree that they should be spending the money they're not spending now. And there are no silos. Sales, marketing, e-com, they're all sharing data. They're opening up themselves freely. It's data free love. It's like Woodstock, but for nerds. But unfortunately, I don't think we're quite there yet. If you want to live in Data Unicorn Land, you've got to have a shared and clear organizational will. You've got to understand the value of speaking to people at a one-to-one level from the top all the way to the bottom and across different departments. If you want to live in Data Unicorn Land, you've got to have a unified data infrastructure. You've got to have the pipes connected across different departments and across different media so that you can be effective in trying to speak to people one-to-one. And if you want to live in Data Unicorn Land, you've got to have insights readily available. Tables, ones and zeros have got to turn into something more visual so that you can communicate it quickly and efficiently to the people internally that don't have the time to understand how their world has changed around them. And if you do this, if we can actually get to Data Unicorn Land, which I believe we can one day, we are headed there, the messages you send won't be simply tolerated. They'll be received as gifts, eagerly accepted by your customers because you have enough information and you have enough logistics and you have enough organizational will to give them something meaningful. Right now, benchmark 30, 40% email open rates. People are pretty excited, pretty happy about that. That means 70, 60% of people didn't bother to read what you had to say. We can do better than that. And in email Data Unicorn Land, your 80 to 90% open rates are evidence of the fact that you are being hyper-relevant. But we don't live in Data Unicorn Land. Unfortunately, we are all being stalked by this multi-tentacled monster, this data octopus that reaches up and constricts our innovation. So I think we should get to know this beast. One of the biggest tentacles is this lack of organizational will, and we'll hear about this from some of our speakers. It's hard to get people who are 2 to 3 steps above us to understand how important it is to do this, because if you think about it, if you are a major marketing executive at a Fortune company, you made your career in a world where volume was the play. Share of voice, owning the channel, inundating the audience with enough of the message so that they buy something. That's how they got to where they are. So in some ways, they're not necessarily qualified to speak at a one-to-one level. It's our jobs to show them that value. It's your opportunity as you move up into those ranks and fill those roles to communicate that value. That organizational will is huge, and it's evidenced by the fact that the budget isn't there, right? Half of the companies are using data-driven marketing say they don't get enough budget and resources to get this done. Your priorities follow your money, so what does that tell you, right? Another one of the big tentacles wrapping itself around your current efforts to speak more individually and one-to-one is the fact you've got old and incongruent data structure, right? The infrastructure behind how the ones and zeros are moving across the organization and moving into the marketing cloud and moving ultimately to the messages to your customers, it's hard to move quickly enough to keep up with the data that you're generating. I'm sure this is something that's familiar to a lot of people in the room here. 42% of companies lack integration between data collection sources, your call center, your website, your co-registration efforts, all living in different places right now. Another one of the tentacles keeping us from unicorn land is poor data collection. Only 12% of companies say that they've got data at an individual customer level. They might have data available at a segmentation level, but to be able to speak to the individual is important because we don't send emails to segments, we send emails to individuals. And it's hard to remember that, it's hard to think about that. And lastly, a lot of people don't know what they're doing yet. A lot of companies are new at this. Email's been around for a long time. Data has been around for a long time, but the ability to use data in a granular way to speak at a meaningful level is fairly new. 85% of companies are going outside their four walls to get help because it's confusing and it's new, because it's not necessarily a volume-based play anymore. So do you live in the data unicorn land, or are you being stalked by the octopus like everybody else? You're not alone, and it's not too late. You're definitely not alone. Almost half of brand executives have pressure right now. They're feeling it. Every blog post they're reading, every keynote speaker at every conference they go to says they should already be there. But the truth is, only 7% of companies feel like they're really killing it in that regard. Only 7% of companies really say that they've got the data they need and the mechanisms in place to speak cross-channel at a meaningful one-to-one level. So you all have the first mover advantage. You're early on this. You can make your names on this. You can make your careers on this, and you can make a difference. Because at the end of the day, if we want to live in unicorn land, it's all about making sure that the brands that we work for are becoming incrementally more meaningful to the customers that they serve. And those are the only ones that are going to survive. It's exciting times. So I've got two people here that are fighting for unicorn land. And it's going to take some teeth to fight off the octopus here. So I'd like to welcome Anusha to give us to start us off here. And then Lindsay will follow up. John would love to be here. He got sick. So.
Thank you, Rich, for the wonderful introduction. Data unicorn land, wow, yeah, let me know when we get there. First off, I'd like to thank Sims and the Brightwave team for inviting me to EIQ. It's been a great experience so far, and I'm truly enjoying all the sessions we have today. But before I kick off my segment, I wanted to briefly introduce myself and my firm, Navistar. So my name is Anusha Ramachandran. I'm a senior customer marketing manager. And what that means is that I get to lead our ECRM strategy. I get to support lead generation. I get to manage our marketing database and its application. So I get to be the plumber and the strategist, which is kind of fun. For those of you in the room who don't know Navistar, it's a 175-year-old brand. Back in the day, we were known under the International Harvester name, selling farming equipment. But today, we sell and we manufacture commercial trucks and school buses, military vehicles, and parts. And we're supported by a dealer network of over 700 locations across the United States and Canada. So for the next 10 to 15 minutes, I wanted to walk all of you through some of my favorite data cliches, tell you a little bit of a data story, kind of the challenges and experiences that we had, the learnings we had, and then leave you with some of my top tips for wrangling the data octopus, so to speak. So let's talk about data cliches. Most of us here would admit that we've been in those meetings with our business leaders or our peers where we come across one or more of these statements. And I think the irony is that the truth lies somewhere in the middle for most of them. So I thought I'm going to take a few minutes today to walk through these data cliches. The first one, big data is good data. Well, guess what? Big data is lots and lots of small data. I think most of us here know that it's just large volume of data points. It's getting updated in real time. It's coming from various sources, which also clearly means that it's easy to confuse precision with accuracy. Because to really make sense of big data, to get value out of it, you need to know how to separate the insights from the noise. So more does not automatically translate to better when it comes to big data. Another one, and this is one of my favorites because I've heard it a few times at my time at Navistar, and it's that our data is too dirty, it's too big or fragmented to get value. A few years ago, I would have admitted to this, that yes, if you have dirty or fragmented data, it can bog down big data analytics. But think about the type of technologies we have today. I think they really would help us overcome these issues. They're able to work with all types of structures, right? Structured, unstructured, fragmented. They can really help us solve some of these problems. Another one, you need a PhD to work with data and analytics. Well, I don't have a PhD, and I work with both data and analytics. I'm someone who really believes that everyone within an organization has a role to play when it comes to collecting, storing, managing, or analyzing data. So we're all citizen data scientists to one extent or another. Think about the brands you love, and think about some of the companies that do really well with a function like data analytics. I know David today earlier spoke about data analysts and product managers working hand in hand. Well, when you infuse the practice of data analytics as a core component of your business, that's when you see value out of the function. The fourth one, data-driven decisions are enough. Think data-driven decisions, and I think most of us are thinking about using data. I don't think we're thinking about making data usable. And the fact is that, yes, moving away from a gut instinct-based decision-making model where you say, hey, my sales guy said this, I think, I feel, I believe, to one that is data-supported is the right first step in building that data-driven culture. You really can't stop there. Because data-driven also means that all of us within an organization, irrespective of our roles, are concerned with the collection and support of high-quality data over the long haul. And last but not the least, another of my favorite, because we've been spending quite a bit of time within our company trying to figure out what that single view of the customer means to us and how do we get there. And the fact is that most business models are complex. So customer data is fragmented across teams and technologies. So expecting any single CRM solution to deliver on that promise of a 360-degree view is challenging. You start adding things like mergers and acquisitions, and I think you've just compounded your problem of anticipating a solution to streamline all that data for you. There was a study that I read, and it's interesting, Rich mentioned it was the same one, that said that only 7% of brands are able to deliver data-driven real-time customer engagements across offline and online touchpoints, which basically means that for most of us working in legacy brands across verticals, we fail to create that common brand experience that's omni-channel. And give it a thought for a minute. The core of the problem is the fact that within our organizations, we don't spend much time talking about data collection methodologies. We don't assign responsibility for the accuracy of the data, irrespective of the data source, irrespective of the function. So a lack thereof is leading to disparities. For firms to really get better at a single view of the customer, you need consistent strategies for dealing with data. So those were some of my top favorite cliches, or the half-truths, as I like to call them. Moving on to my data story. And I promise this is an interesting one because it got me really excited. It was an opportunity where I got to lead a campaign. I told Rich earlier, I thought, man, this campaign is going to get me promoted. Less that I felt that I almost got fired over it. And I'll tell you the what and the how, but just some background information over it. So Navistar has a connected vehicle business unit called On-Command Connection. And in simple terms, what it really means is that it's this cool ecosystem of tools and technologies that allows us to have two-way interaction with vehicles. So think about companies that own and operate vehicles. Well, we make it easy for them to manage all aspects of their drivers, the route, maintenance, the vehicle. So their vehicles are spending more time on the road, delivering goods and services, making money, making sure the business is profitable. And quite frankly, Navistar does have a first-mover advantage in the space because we are leading the charge when it comes to connected vehicle. So when a team from the senior leadership team, they got together and they were discussing On-Command and the data and the strategy, and they had a brilliant idea. They said, hey, through the On-Command system, we know when vehicles break down. We know what parts they need. And we sell parts through our dealer network. Seems like pretty complementary ideas. And my team got roped into the conversation, and we had the challenge posed. How would you leverage On-Command data to trigger real-time offers to customers? So what that means is that if you're a beer distributor up in Michigan and your fleet is On-Command and one of your trucks has an oil change coming up, we would basically be able to send you, say, a 10% off your next oil change in real time. Fantastic idea. We loved it. We got excited. We started digging into the data. We started talking about high-level execution plans. We said, we've got some disparate systems. They need to talk to each other. We discussed what's customer segments, what type of offers, what type of creative are we going to use, and how we're going to set up the customer journeys. And of course, you want to use a test and learn approach, because if this is successful, then we're going to automate this at full scale. It was around this time, while we were digging into the data and looking into the ecosystem and kind of coming up with a plan, that I started feeling not so good about the campaign and not so good about the prospects of me getting promoted. And here's why. The on-command system is great, but it's designed to capture vehicle data. It isn't designed for marketing activation. So what do I mean by that? 75% of our customer universe on command is non-addressable for marketing purpose. 75%. Rich mentions 30% open rate. Wait till you hear mine. So what we were staring at was invalid contact names, missing contact names, inconsistent data formats, just throwing off our timing on cleaning and preparing the data for a campaign like this. And we, quite honestly, even had our suspicions around the relevancy of the contacts that we had. So we took a deep breath, and we took a step back and said, OK, how about we do an opt-in campaign? How about we reach out to the 25% that is addressable and ask them if, hey, are you the relevant contact? And if not, then would you want to share your savings and tell us who the right marketing contact is for promotional offers? As expected, the campaign did not do great. We had a 7% open rate and a 2% click-through, pretty below benchmark numbers. We said, OK, so we are not going to go all out with a campaign like this, customer-facing. We wanted to limit our exposure risk, and we said, we'll pick a few low-risk promotional items. We'll do batteries, headlights, right? We all need those replaced once in a while, even if you're a trucker. And we'll go after a very specific customer segment, someone who qualifies based on the data that we have, and we'll send this out. And what ended up happening is we sent this campaign out to around 3,000 customers, right? Pretty safe. And the results were, I think, something that we did expect. So we had some learnings. We saw that, OK, at least if you had a personalized subject line with a view, they at least opened the email as compared to having numbers or dollars. And some of our suspicions around the data not being valid or relevant came true because we had pretty high unsubscribe rates. And well, for me, all my prospects of getting promoted got shot down because we sold one battery out of this campaign. 90 days of hard work with the data and with the campaign and the thought, and one battery, yes. So outside of the fact that I was leading a campaign that sold one battery, what happened next was pretty interesting. In a way, because of what we had discovered with our data and discovered through this campaign, we had compelled our senior leadership team to take a closer look at our data strategy, not just for on-command, but overall for the enterprise. They were starting to take a closer look at what kind of strategies, what kind of process were we applying to customer acquisition and nurture, right? So we had a few brainstorming sessions. We used this really fancy framework, envision, execute, evolve. I think fundamentally there were just two things we were trying to answer. What does a truly differentiated customer experience mean for Navistar, for on-command? And knowing what we knew about our data, our customers, were we able to visualize, were we able to design that end state? And to me, quite frankly, I think there were three things that the organization was trying to address. They knew they had to fix the data hygiene issues at source. They had to streamline the data capture. And they had to identify ways to grow that addressable customer universe organically. If you ask me today where we are in the journey, I would say yes, we've gotten way longer than we were 90 days ago in the road mapping exercise and figuring out what those core components, what those must-haves are to take an idea like this from pilot to production, right? But out of everything I've learned from this campaign, and out of all the time that I've spent in the space of marketing analytics, I want to share with you some of my top tips for wrangling the data octopus. So here they are. And the first one is one of my favorites, right? It's about data-driven customer-centric strategy. And what I mean by this is that, yes, comprehensive data governance, it does require a top-down buy-in, but it also requires bottoms-up execution, which means that all of us here in the room, as a leader, as an influencer, we have a role to play in sharing knowledge, in sharing insights, and sharing best practices within our organization to help our organizations become more data-driven in a customer-centric way. I know I said this early on, but truly, more does not automatically become better with data. The key is to understand how to separate the insights from the noise. And this is another one that I use a lot within my organization. Think big, start small, act fast. And what I really mean when I say this is that do not be afraid to do a pilot, to do a proof of concept. Take your idea for a test drive, if you will. Because the fact is that by doing that, you learn a lot more about your own data and your own processes. And yes, we all like to talk about real-time personalization and one-to-one marketing and AI, and I agree. That segment of one is here to stay. But what that also means is that we all have just established that this is a value game. It's not a volume game anymore. Before I end this presentation today, I wanted to share this quote that I came across, and it stuck with me as a data-driven marketer, and it's this, right? Data is important. It's not going away. But let's make sure that our data tells a story, that it tells a story in a meaningful way about our brand, about our customers, about our products. Because data without context, it is just numbers. Thank you so much for listening to me, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much. All right, Lindsay Brothers from Indeed.
All right. Yeah, how y'all doing? Woo! Power pose. All right, so wrangling the data octopus. I'm going to do this by telling you about an A/B test at Indeed. I'm Lindsay Brothers, and I'm a product manager at Indeed. You may know Indeed. It's the #1 job search site worldwide. We're available in 60 countries, 30 languages. We have 200 million unique visitors every single month with more than 20 million jobs. And we help people get jobs. In fact, this is our mission. This is something we're passionate about. We're a data-driven company. Every decision at Indeed is backed up with data. And we're growing. We're now more than 6,000 employees worldwide with more products every day. That means a lot of data, a tremendous amount of data. In fact, we can fill up the Library of Congress every 1.25 days. That's a lot of data, 25 terabytes every 1.25 days. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about job alerts. This is what I work on. This is the product I work on. And it looks like this. It's an email. Surprise. So essentially, it's a daily or weekly subscription with the newest jobs. As soon as they're available and posted on Indeed, the job seeker will get them in an email. It's up to 30 jobs. And why is this important? This is our #1 email sent to millions of job seekers worldwide. And it's very helpful to job seekers in that they're able to see the newest jobs and apply to them right away. This is Indeed. Essentially, I've done a search for email marketing jobs in Atlanta, Georgia. I can see all the newest jobs right there. And on the right rail, I can subscribe to a job alert. I just put in my email address, click activate, and I'll start receiving new jobs in my inbox the very next day. I can also subscribe via a pop-up. So this is based on my activity. If I go to the second page, a pop-up will appear. I can put in my email address and subscribe. And of course, there's mobile. You can subscribe via mobile. You're on the app or on mobile web. You scroll down, put in your email address, and be the first to see new jobs. So how do we think about data at Indeed? Like I mentioned before, we make data-driven decisions. We have lots and lots of data. We are wrangling that octopus every day. And we do data-driven product development. That means significant amount of A/B tests. In fact, we're running hundreds of A/B tests right now. The Indeed you see is not going to be the same as the person sitting next to you sees. And we've built these tools. We've built tools to help with data-driven decision making. And we have tools for A/B testing. So these tools are available via open source. They're linked to in the speaker notes of the slide deck, which will be shared later, but they are available. Now, what do I mean when I say an A/B test? It's essentially split testing. So this is that right rail sign up we saw before. On the left-hand side, this is the control group, essentially the normal behavior, the expected behavior. And on the right-hand side is a test, A versus B. What's the difference? The button color. On the left-hand side, white. On the right side, blue. So essentially, we're just testing the button color to see if that can help signups. So we define our goal at the beginning, driving signups, and then we test a new behavior. This is just an example, as this sign-up form has had more tests on it than I could ever count. We've tested the copy, the color, the placement, the behavior, everything. And now let's dive into just one A/B test. This is the Indeed Apply application form. Essentially, when a job is hosted on Indeed or an employer has an integration with Indeed, a job seeker can apply directly through Indeed. This makes it easier for the job seeker. They're on Indeed, they're searching, they can apply with their Indeed resume, easy peasy. Now, what did we want to do? We want to drive job alert signups, of course. So we put in a checkbox. This checkbox says, notify me when similar jobs are available. All the job seeker has to do is check that checkbox. Very next day, they'll start getting jobs in their inbox. Cool. This is a job alert, just to remind you, this is the email they're signing up for. So what's better, A versus B, control versus test? Checkbox, no checkbox. Now on B, there's a little more information. When I asked for a screenshot, someone wanted to put in all their information. So just keep in mind, the difference is checkbox, no checkbox. This is all we're doing, adding a checkbox, allowing the job seeker to subscribe as they're applying for a job. Whoa, there is a lot of data in this test. I mentioned hundreds of millions of job seekers on Indeed every day applying to jobs. Just by adding a single checkbox, we generated a massive amount of data. Whew. Okay, so the first thing we saw by adding a single checkbox was a 0.1% decrease in applies. Now, you may say, Lindsay, that's nothing. Well, when you're talking about millions of applications, that's something. And in fact, there was a lot of resistance to this test when we first saw this. Just by a 0.1% decrease, that's hundreds of thousands of lost applications. I got some angry emails real quick. Yeah, I know, I know. I feel the same way. But wait, we saw a massive increase in job alert subscriptions, 50%. Yeah, I was excited. But is it worth it? We're seeing this huge increase in job alert subscriptions, but the applies on that page are going down. We help people get jobs, that's what we do. If applies go down, what are we here for? Applies are the biggest indicator that people are getting jobs on Indeed. But of course, job alerts drive applies. It's an email with jobs. So we had to figure out how many applies are we getting from this new email subscription. Of course, we wanted to think about, okay, people are subscribing to this job alert through the application process. How does it compare to those other subscription models? How does it compare to the other creation methods? Remember, you can subscribe on the right rail, you can subscribe on a pop-up, and of course, mobile. How do these creation methods, subscription methods, compare to that checkbox? Oh my gosh. The open rate is 12% lower. That means the click-through rate is lower. Job seekers are less likely to open this email and click through. Do job seekers want this email? But there was an increase in apply rate. Users were more likely to apply to a job in this email than click or open compared to the other subscription methods. That was exciting. But we had to do some math. Like I mentioned before, we were losing applies on that page, but we're gaining subscriptions. Is it worth it? Are we helping people get jobs? What's the impact of this new feature? And is it helping us achieve our goals? We want to help people get jobs. Are we doing that? So we needed to calculate the downstream applies. How many applies were resulting from this new email subscription? Now we're all in email and we know that people don't stay engaged with email forever. Especially in the case of Indeed, we don't want that. Eventually people will unsubscribe or stop reading the email. With Indeed, we want people to get jobs. We don't want you to keep checking your email forever. So we figured out how long, in general, is someone subscribed to a job alert? For how long do they stay engaged with a job alert? And then we calculated the apply rate from this email. How likely is someone to apply to a job in this new job alert? From there, looking at the lifespan of a job alert and the apply rate, how many applies can we expect to get from these new job alerts over their lifespan? We're already losing hundreds of thousands of applies from that checkbox, but is it worth it? It was. We were getting millions more applies from this new job alert subscription. Yeah, it was time to party. Although we had encountered significant resistance at the beginning, we were now driving millions more applies from this new subscription. And we rolled out the test. Now, generally when we do A/B testing, we start small, 5% allocations per group, and then we generally increase or decrease depending on the behavior. So over time, we expanded this test. It's now available, so when you go on Indeed, apply to a job, you'll see a little checkbox. Please click it. So some takeaways. Everyone essentially needs to be on the same page, same data page. What metrics are we driving? What's our goal? How do we calculate it? What do we care about? Of course, every team, especially at larger companies, have different goals or KPIs. In our case, we care a lot about job alert subscriptions, of course, but with communicating with other teams, we agreed on applies as the most important metric, and that made it easier to discuss the results of the test and the impact. Being open to testing. We essentially added this checkbox and saw a decrease in a metric we cared about. By being open to testing and looking at the downstream impact of the test, we're able to eventually come to a conclusion that was better for job seekers. And using your goal as a guide. Defining the goal at the beginning made it much easier for us to work on this test together. We cared about helping people get jobs, therefore let's look at applies. And defining that goal really helped us come to the conclusion that this was in fact worth it. This simple checkbox now empowers users to subscribe simply as they're applying for a job. So thank you. If you'd like to talk more about data later, I'm around. I'm also on Twitter. Thanks.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Thank you to Anusha and Lindsay. That's it for us. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.